Hey everybody. What we're going to be doing today is a soft-spoken ASMR slash discussing how to save money if you're not already let's say, a homeowner or big investor. You're somebody that's paying rent or looking to move out, from a situation with maybe you're living with parents or something where you're not paying rent, or you're trying to get a little bit more freedom, right? So, the first thing that comes to mind is how are you spending per month? Are you tracking it? What are you doing on it? And for me, my general rule of thumb is in the beginning, I'd say I don't want to spend more than rent. Now, let's say you're in a situation where you're not paying rent yet. You might want to go, well, what kind of place is rent going to be like? So kind of shop around on Craigslist and stuff and say, how much is, let's say, a small apartment or a shared room kind of thing, and gauge how much that is. Okay, so start saving in the sense where you're preparing yourself for when you're going to move out or whatnot. And I think that's really important because that's what I started doing when I was living with family, and I just started saving and just watching how much I was spending, right? And there's kind of a couple rule of thumbs. People say you need to earn three times more than your rent, okay, before you move into a place. And that might sound like a lot, but and it kind of is. I'm not quite there yet, but it's a great general rule of thumb where you want to not be in a bind if, let's say, let's say for example, there's an emergency that happens and you're just out of cash, tapped out. Why? Because let's say you're only making 1.5 times rent. Only making 1.5 times rent, let's say a vehicle problem happens, some kind of maybe theft or injury happens, can get very complicated, right? And that's what people end up in trouble on. So if you can get to the 3x, earning three times more than your monthly rent, that's a very good start. I have a couple tips that will help, more that are more about savings, right? So let's say you have rent, and let's just say, for example, you got a great deal where you're living right now. You're doing really good, and let's say you're renting a room for 500. Okay, just like 500, clean number, right? Okay, so first of all, if you don't already have a checking account, you need to kind of like figure that out because you're going to need a checking and a savings to do any of this stuff. And sometimes it's hard. I think a lot of companies are paying people with these they're paying them in these cards that you got to take to Walgreens. That actually happened to me once where I got paid, and I'm like, what do I do with this? And I had to withdraw money from a Walgreens in order to pay rent to put that into my checking account. It's really weird. Main thing is you need to figure out your checking and your direct deposit stuff because that's really key. Um, Direct deposit is going to save you money because let's say, imagine like you're getting these card things, right? And then you're getting paid with this card thing, and then you have to pay a few dollars every time you want to withdraw money from that card. It doesn't make sense, right? Because what happens when you need to withdraw money from that card more than once? You might have lost $10. You might have lost $6, and if you're in a situation where you're getting paid with these little card things, then that's $6. That $10 is going to really sting. So it's much better to, you know, go to a bank and just say, hey, I want to deposit this money and just start a basic checking account. And most of the people that are watching this video probably already have a checking and a savings, okay? But if you don't, you need to really save your bucks and try and establish a relationship with a bigger bank where they have ATMs and they'll accept direct deposit and the whole thing, because you know that's crucial to getting on the feet and whatnot. But so the first thing is saying, okay, how much is rent? So rent's $500. So you want to have in your checking at least 3 times that in your checking. Okay, so if your rent's $500, you want to have like, well, 3 times then means you're doing pretty good, right? Because if you have 3, so that means you have 1,500, right? So that's good. But if you have 2 to 3 times that, that's like safe, as long as there isn't like a really critical thing happening, right? But you don't really want to start putting stuff into your savings until you can consistently have like twice that rent, or 2 to 3 times that rent consistently. You have that pipeline, you're feeling good. Then what happens is you can set up things. Some banks can set up automatic savings, like it'll go directly to your savings. I do that. I do like $25 a month or whatever. But then I'll also, if I feel like confident that I got rent covered, then I might put like $100, $200 into my savings. Okay, and that savings that's directly tied with your bank is called liquid savings. Okay, so what that means is you can take that liquid money and put it into your checking, usually without a penalty if you're using a bigger bank. Man, as long as you don't do it several times per month, you can kind of like put it in there. And that's good, because let's say you have 1,200 in your checking and you have 800 in your savings, right? A big car repair happens, like the one I just had recently, where it was $1,000. So, well, rent might be coming around the corner, and so let's say you're paying like 500 in rent minus the 1,200 you have in your checking, then that's only 700 to cover your car. But you can transfer that savings a few days ahead of time, or maybe a week or so ahead of time, and transfer what you need, so that way you're not doing overdrafts when you're paying off your car repair. Things like that. That's going to really save. In my situation, I knew my car repair was going to happen several months ahead of time, because I was having like a 60,000 mile maintenance or whatnot. So I planned ahead. So I actually didn't have to tap into my savings. I just used my checking. It's something to think about. And it's only really possible if you're earning enough that you can critically look at things or whatnot. Okay, so there's put money into your savings is liquid. But then there's another type of a savings where it's like semi-liquid or not really liquid. So there's some like savings accounts where they might give a bigger interest rate, but you have to transfer money into that savings account, or it's harder to access. And I think those are actually pretty cool. I would make it so your most of your money is in your liquid savings though first, before putting into the more non-liquid savings account where you have to transfer into it, because every time you got to transfer back from another bank into your current bank, it's very risky if an emergency pops up, right? So you want to make sure like your liquid to protect you is higher than the non-liquid stuff, at least unless you start making big bucks. If you start making big bucks, you're already doing better than I am, and so you already got your own strategy. For example, the investment thing. I get a lot of people where they start talking to me about their investments, and I don't really think, because basically there's FDIC insured savings accounts and checking accounts, and then there's investments. Most investments aren't FDIC insured. That means if the investors, whoever's working with your money, or if you're using the stock market or money, if you lose that money, it's gone. And that's extremely risky. And some people put like half of what they have in those things, and I'm like, okay. And the one of the rhetoric that I hear on it is, well, if you're not putting it in these things, then you're losing your money due to inflation. I'm saying I get that. That makes sense to me. Uh, you know, if I had a lot of excess cash, I probably maybe get a home or something like that. Transition from renting to home owning. I'm not into that yet. I'm not ready for it, but I would probably do that first before getting heavily into like, those non protected investments, like heavy into stock market, heavy into this, heavy into that. Because I don't know if you're noticing, but the stock market is changing every day. The face of the country is changing every day, where there's massive construction happening. There's a lot more public transportation, which is usually indicative of preparation for people living closer together. And it probably is going to be great for the economy, actually, because there's going to be more opportunities to move around without having to have a car and stuff. But it's usually indicative of a when there's a contraction of surface area of people, it usually means it's preparation for a contraction in the economy. So it means like things are going to be tighter. If there's a sprawl where people are stretching out like to suburbs, it means there's an expansion of the economy. People want their little mansion lands, right? Since things are coming back in, things are going to be getting a little bit more competitive, and you got to be thinking critically to survive here. So that, the really like Hail Mary passes where you just go, let's try a stock market. This is your life here. You're not going to just try it. Let's try it. No. You got to be careful, right? And there's certain things, right, where spending habits directly correlate to savings habits, right? So take a look at this. This is a Starbucks coffee cup. This is expensive. You don't want to have these expenses unless it's if like, for example, let's say you're at work, right? And you're like, if I don't get coffee, I'm gonna die, right? I'm not gonna perform well at work. It might be fortuitous to get that coffee, it might be fortuitous to get that cheeseburger or whatever. But remember, everything has a cost, and there's a cost over time. If you're spending $2 on coffee every day and you work 5 times a week, that's $10 a week. If you're spending $4 on coffee a day, that's $20. It starts adding up. So you need to be really mindful in watching that, and because that money, people say, well, I'm going to spend it anyway. Well, how it really works when you're looking at like online banking or whatnot is you see what's in your checking and you see what's in your saving, and then you make a decision on whether or not you want to save more. Okay, and so that's usually based on the numbers you see. So if you're withdrawing more cash for snacks, food, treats, creature comforts that are gonna toys, clothes, all these things, going out, going to the movies, all these things that are, if those are all I must have, you're going to have less numbers there for your checking account for you to say, you know what, I feel pretty flush, let's transfer some of this to the savings. Because that's the real motivator, is transferring from the checking to the savings, and then from the liquid savings to the high yield savings. It's really that simple. Some people say high yield savings is a waste of time. It's better to go directly to stock market. Okay, that's fine. That's your choice. That's your thinking on it. I think the high yield savings is superior. I think it should be like a 10-to-1 ratio, though. I don't think that, or I'm more like a 6-to-1. I'm like a 6-to-1 right now, Yeah, 5 to 1. That's right. I'm like I have 5 or 6 to 1 right now, and I think that's for me what makes me so I can sleep at night. I'm not scared. Like I'm not tripping on it, and I think it's the very important to live your life in a way where you're not stressing about this like basic necessity stuff, and whatever system you can come up with to do that is going to be very beneficial. So let's talk a little bit about how spending habits tie into things. The food is not fair. Okay, let me tell you, if you go out to eat somewhere, you might not get the same nutrition value as a fifth the cost of if you made it yourself. Okay, so not everybody has the time and patience to cook. You might not even have the tools required to cook. That is in of itself an investment. So you gotta be really like mindful of what you're spending on when you're going out to eat if you're doing it all the time. Now, it's a little different if you're in a situation where you're studying, because let's say you're studying and you're trying to get an advanced degree, or you're studying and you're working on a project that you feel like is an investment. You got to factor that in too. So for example, let's say someone's getting a bachelor's of science in computer engineering, right? Computer science or computer engineering. That degree is going to pay off right now. That's a clean degree right now. And so if you're in that situation, it might be more beneficial for someone to go all in to make sure they're debt free after getting out of school, and eating those snacks, do whatever, and focusing less on savings and just focusing more on non-debt and getting through the degree and learning well, because they're going to come out of it with that good job. And so that's I think that's a very good thing to think about. Now, let's say you're in a situation where you're not teching up, you're not self-investing, right? Then if you're not really investing in yourself, then you kind of need to like gauge what your spending is, so that way you're not investing in the own skill set. So then you need to invest that money into something, so that way that money can generate opportunities. And that's why a lot of people go stock market, because they could say, oh, I earned this much in the stock market with this stuff. It's higher risk. I get it. I personally think that education is really good. I would just be careful with the debt, because you can't go bankrupt on student loans at this time. I think you haven't been able to for like 20 years, so pretty much you're stuck with them. And also school's getting very expensive, and even people with certain degrees are ending up having trouble finding work if, let's say, their portfolio doesn't match up, or maybe they didn't intern enough. So it's very, very competitive out there. Something to think about. Let me think. Talking about savings. Oh yeah. So if you can come up with a system where every day you're making more than you spend, and you get your rent covered early in the month, that's really the pro way of doing it. It's like, bam, rent's covered by week 1.5. The rest of the week's butter. I only use about a half of a week on food. Boom, boom, build that savings. That's clean. I was talking about that. Savings. Food. Oh, and then there's also like going out, right? Have you ever noticed, like, sometimes you go out with friends and it's like all the money's just like gone? It's like, well, we went there and then we went there, and then for some reason we ended up at an amusement park, and then at the amusement park, for some reason, our money started to go quickly. There are subsystems that occur in daily life that use a lot of resources. Oh, that's what it was. Don't think of a dollar as a dollar. don't think of it like that. One of the best games I've ever played was called Homeworld, and I think they did they did a remaster of it, and I haven't done the remaster, but I played the first one. I loved it, and in it, when you're got your ships and everything, you're doing your things. They don't call the resources money. It's not called this. They just called it a resource unit, and think of your money as a resource unit. You can use that resource unit for whatever you want. It's your money. It's your resource unit. So you have that $1 or that one resource unit. Well, how many resource units do you earn per hour? That's when things get cool, because you'd be like, well, this Starbucks cup cost me 4 resource units. Okay, that was 4 resource units. I only earn X number of resource units per hour. So basically, now you look at time as, you could say every hour is a time unit, or a large time unit. Like, this is, you don't really want to talk like this in real life. People think you're crazy, but I mean, you could kind of just think about it in the back of your head. You could be like, okay, so this Starbucks cup basically cost me 30 minutes of my life, right? 30 minutes that I could be studying, 30 minutes that you could be doing this, whatever your situation is. And now you're linking your resource units with your time units. And when you start thinking critically like that, you can start seeing opportunities. Well, I saw this shirt on clearance at this retailer, and this shirt looks good. This is costing, let's say, 40 resource units, which is going to be about, let's say that's like 15 time units. I think that shirt is going to help me land the gig or land the job. That's a good investment. That's worth my time. And then now you're going to start to see things differently. So that's when I started looking at like dollars as resources and time as resources. I started to save a little bit more, because I would see things where people were like, well, maybe you should do this and this, and I just do the math real quick, and I'm like, that's not something I'm going to do. It's just very simple, because it's just a bad investment. It's just kind of done, and you just instantly handle it. People will say, well, maybe you should do this, and you're like, well, this costs 0 resource units, and setting it up is going to be 2 time units, and it could eventually yield resource units. It's almost a no-brainer for me to do it. Not doing it would almost be costing me resource units, because of the opportunity is so great, the percentage chance of yielding resources. So let me give you a case in point. Like, I make music and stuff like that, and I've put them up for downloads on iTunes and things like that. That's costing me 10 resource units per year per song. And I look at the numbers and I'm like, you know what? I'm getting like 5 cents a year for some of these songs. And it's very simple. I just say I don't want to renew it anymore. It's not that $10 is a huge, it's a huge sting to my finances or whatnot. It's more like, I think I can self-advertise better than having to use that as a form of advertisement. It's a drain of resources. I need to tighten it up. Another example is I do the Adobe Creative Cloud stuff, where I have all the Photoshop files and the Premiere and all that stuff, and that's costing like $30 a month for my certain thing. But for me, I actually view that as a good investment. It's about the same as my gym membership, which I don't really use enough at all. And but I view that one as actually a good investment for my personal situation, because I like knowing that I don't have viruses on my stuff, and that I'm going to get the right updates on it. And I use Photoshop all the time, and so I feel that as a good investment of the time resource units. But that is costing me a certain number of hours per month of my life to pay for that. So it's something to think about, and I hope that this this information has some value to maybe people who are kind of browsing around. And it's definitely always good seeing new subscribers and new visitors to the channel. So if you like this, like, subscribe, and thanks so much for visiting. Thank you.